Hello scholars, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we'll be looking at the story of Grenville, a scholar from Windsward. Let's get right into it. January 3rd. I find myself sitting at the piano more of late, yet my fingers do not touch the keys. Of all the items I salvaged from the wreckage, it has withstood time's erosion, where all else in my life has not. In burying Genevieve and Simon, I felt as if I buried a part of myself. There is nothing to strive for, nothing more the island holds for me. Even the presence of the nearby outpost I find grating. The incessant traffic of merchant and animals back and forth on the roads, carving up and dividing what they can dig and pluck from the isle. There must be more, something else I may focus upon. I fear that I will live here forever, aimless. I do not know why the isle did not awaken my wife, my son, as it did so many others. Perhaps they had tired of life here, tired of me, and saw no future in it. I may never know, but I know this. If I do not steady my racing thoughts, I may try to find the same path as they. January 17th. I had a curious visitor a few days ago, a Frenchwoman, M. Cartier, a tanner of Buffalo, but more of the look of a hunter about her, oddly enough. She had heard of me and the piano, and sought me out to see it for herself. She seemed surprised by my disposition, but did not inquire deeply about it. I sensed she had lost someone, yet is at peace with it. Quite uncharacteristic of me, I had asked her how she had come to cope. She said that the isle itself awoke her. Some saw it as a hell, a curse, purgatory, some as paradise, but that no one truly knew it at all. It was our life, she said, and the isle gave birth to all manner of wonders to feed our curiosity. We were not the first here. Others were here. You can see it in the ruins to the north, the great spheres upon the plains. This was a city once, all around us. I inquired what happened to the city and the people before us. She smiled and said, "M. Grenville, perhaps you were brought here to answer that question." I gave her words much thought over the past few days. I will seek out these structures, and what sense can be made of them. It is better than remaining here and letting more dust gather upon the piano keys. February 24th. I've secured a guide, a fellow named Rolf. Unlike the others, seemed undaunted by the tales of obelisks, spheres, even the dead amongst the ruins on the ridge. "They's dead, no life left in 'em," he said. "Garden nothing, York's all." He told me that you might chance across one of them in the underbrush while hunting, usually near the great stone structures of the isle, like the lighthouse to the south. I asked if he was not curious about them, and he shrugged, and said if I was, and I had coin to raise off to pay him with, then my curiosity was his gain. Who cares who built them, as long as they are not more than skeletons now? Dead and gone is how I prefer, and I'd rather not join him. I told him my interest lay with the spheres, and perhaps this curious temple he mentioned to the east. April 1st. Rolf's guidance proved true. The man brought us to one of the great spheres and said here we might labor without interruption. He also introduced me to a former quartermaster of the East Stokes Company, a stern woman by the name of Mattie, who leads a crew of a dozen laborers in need of employment. The Stokes Company came to an unfortunate end when their compound was torched by rivals. She seemed not bitter by the experience, only matter-of-fact, and had no wish to build more walls to be burned down again. The sphere is partially buried as the others, and requires men to dig, but Mattie assured us her crew would put their backs into it if they knew what was good for them. And I had the coin to pay them. I assured them I did. The lie tasted sour in my mouth, but I will figure out a means to pay them. The work on the Great Sphere must begin in the meantime. April 15th. The work goes swiftly. We've carried away the soil from beneath the Great Sphere, revealing the full mark carved upon the stone. Maddie's men labor honest and industrious. They work efficiently, which is well and good, as I'm not certain how far my coin will last. Maddie is more worried about provisions. Food has proven a challenge, as the scouts find they must range farther and farther from camp for game. This has worried Rolf, though he has not said why. He is often at the perimeter, staring into the woods. More curiously, Maddie claims she has seen such marks before, on smaller spheres being sold at the outposts. She said the smaller spheres were scavenged from hunters near the temple to the east. Rolf frowned at that, and said it wasn't in the ground they found the spheres, but in the rib cages of skeletons there, like stone hearts. Maddie looked unsettled by the news, as did her men. I pressed Rolf on this, but he refused to speak further. I must secure one of these spheres. After our work here, perhaps a trip to the temple is in order. April 17th. One of the hunters returned, not with game, but with a strange talisman of bone, etched with red markings. The red might have been blood, but its hue was strange and reminded me of autumn colors in a way I couldn't explain. Touching it, something red and wet, yet I could see no stain upon my hand. The sensation lingered for quite some time after, like an unpleasant aftertaste in my thoughts. When the hunter showed it to Rolf's temper flared. He cursed at the man and told him to cast it away. "It'll draw others," he spat. "The withered wear them around their neck like collars," he claimed. I had no reason to doubt him, and his reaction was such I scrubbed my hand where I touched the talisman until it was almost bloody. Yet I could still feel it on my skin. April 19th. I write this far from the excavation, yet I am alive and I must recount what happened. Rolf and I were the only ones I know who managed to escape. It was near dusk. Rolf had sought me out. One of the guides had gone missing, not deserted. Of that, Rolf was certain. It was something else. His instincts proved true, for as dusk bled out, we heard a distant cry in the woods. Then silence. Then spotted shapes, hunched, moved amongst the trees. Rolf became afraid, but to the man's credit, it did not stay his actions, as he pushed me to move. "When there's one, there's at least two others you can't see," he hissed to me, and fighting my hesitation, I left the equipment behind. Cursed Isle. These infernal things seek to drive us from knowledge at every turn. Whatever powers these obelisks hold, the ancients of Eternum made use of them, or, more likely, shaped them themselves. But to what purpose, I do not know. Life grows thickly about them, striking blue flowers unlike any I have seen on the Isle, and even Azoth-infused flora, which we gather carefully. Rolf seemed out of sorts, has been since the attack on the dig site. He was hunched to the ground at a stone's throw from the obelisk, staring at it as if listening to something, clutching the vial of Azoth I paid him with. I had to address him twice before the fellow snapped out of it, still at a loss for words. After addressing him rather sharply, perhaps sharper than was merited, Rolf said that he felt the Azoth sing in the presence of the obelisk, and did not know what to make of it. We shall continue our circuit of the ring of obelisks, then leave the central spire for last. May 20th. Rolf again voiced his fears that Azoth might awaken that which lies dormant on Eternum. The man is a fool, and has not the heart to continue. I reminded him of the great fields of life that blossomed around the obelisks. If that was their power while the obelisks slept, what life might rise should they wake, and how could that be not but a good thing? Do we ourselves not awake each day, and are better than when we sleep, and know nothing but dreams? Even my reasoned arguments did not quell the man's doubt. He became quite animated, saying I knew not what might wake at the center spire, Even the dead, the skeletons that encircled the cursed temple, might come alive if their hearts were tied to this land. I suspect our ways must soon part, though I know his promise of payment keeps him in my shadow for now. If needs must, I will send him away. But before he goes, I will need his Azoth for what I plan next. I will unlock the mysteries here, and cast such a light that it will burn away doubts and shadow from fearful minds. I take no pride in what happened next, but do not take this as a writ of confession. Rolf refused me, and would not part with the Azoth he carried. I explained to him at length that I was certain of my discovery, but lacked the means to test it with a central obelisk. But with his cooperation, we might yet illuminate the secrets of the culture that has come before us. He grew agitated, and said that he would leave at dawn and head back to Reen's home and seek shelter with the Frenchwoman, and take the Azoth with him. He spoke of nameless dangers if I persisted in my efforts, until I grew quite tired of it, and told him I wished to hear no more. At this point, I ordered him to part with the Azoth one last time. He shook his head, and before he could voice his refusal, I had sunk my knife into his throat. I knew it would not kill him, but I had no use for his body any longer. It was what he carried I needed. If he wanted to go, then so be it. His other belongings would remain should he brave the journey again. I took solely the Azoth, and I made a promise that should our paths cross, I would repay him for its use, if Eternum let him wake as it did the others. I have one attempt at this, and I shall do so at the central spire. The page is partially burned. Seems Rolf spoke true. The Azoth takes on a light in proximity to the obelisk, and I can see a tracery of light where none existed before, and a sound, like a roar the closer one comes to the stone, as if something caged, waiting to be released. My path seems clear. If these markings are touched with Azoth, then perhaps the obelisk shall reveal its secrets, and we will see what lies within. And should my findings prove, the rest of the page is burned, illegible. The page is burned, but it looks like it was written on after it was burnt, not before. My hands shake as I write this. I was a fool. First the spire, the great light. The light grew above me like the dawn of a second day, and my heart leapt with hope. And again, when I saw the torches along the main road blossom into blue flame, it was as if I had woken the isle itself. Then a terrible silence from the spire as the light streaming from it froze in the air, as if paralyzed by touching the earth. I confess I was consumed by a growing dread, and I fled along the road, the blue flames leading my steps. As it turned out, here to the temple ruins from before. The temple was no sanctuary. Had the azure flame summoned me here? Whatever occurred at the spire, it had touched here as well, awakening something terrible. I saw the same blue fire that lit the lanterns of the road, now burn within the chest of the skeletal figures I had taken for dead. They were not dead, I see now, merely sleeping. Now they walked, blades drawn, circling the temple with dark intent. What have I awoken? May the powers of Eternum have mercy upon my soul. Thanks for watching the video. As always, my Patreon will be in the description below if you want to support this channel. With that being said, I'll see you next time, scholars. Keep studying.